The morning sun cast long shadows across the training ground at Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado, California. General Marcus Thompson stood at the edge of the compound, watching as the latest batch of Navy SEAL candidates struggled through their morning physical training. His weathered face showed no emotion as he observed the grueling exercises that had broken countless hopefuls over the years. Thompson had seen it all during his 30-year military career. He had risen through the ranks from a young Marine to his current position overseeing special operations training. His reputation was legendary among military circles, a man who demanded excellence and accepted nothing less than perfection from those under his command. The sound of approaching footsteps caught his attention. He turned to see Commander Sarah Mitchell walking toward him, her stride confident and purposeful. She was a newly appointed liaison officer between the Pentagon and the SEAL training program, a position that had raised more than a few eyebrows among the old guard. "General Thompson," Sarah said, offering a crisp salute as she approached. The general returned the salute with practiced precision. "Commander Mitchell, I trust you've had time to review the training protocols?" "Yes, sir. I've spent the past week observing the various phases of instruction." Sarah's voice was steady, professional. "I'm impressed by the thoroughness of the program." Thompson studied her carefully. At 32, Sarah Mitchell had already distinguished herself in naval intelligence and special operations support. Her record was spotless, her recommendations glowing. Yet something about her presence at the SEAL compound felt different from the typical Pentagon brass who occasionally visited. "The SEAL program isn't just about physical conditioning," Thompson explained as they began walking toward the main training facility. "It's about breaking down barriers that most people don't even know exist within themselves. We forge warriors who can operate in any environment, under any circumstances." They paused near a group of candidates practicing close-quarters combat techniques. The instructor, a grizzled Master Chief Petty Officer named Rodriguez, was demonstrating proper hand-to-hand combat positioning. His movements were fluid, economical, each gesture serving a specific tactical purpose. "The physical skills are just the beginning," Thompson continued. "What we really develop here is mental resilience, the ability to function when every fiber of your being wants to quit, the capacity to make life-or-death decisions in fractions of seconds." Sarah nodded, her attention focused on the training exercise. She watched as the candidates attempted to replicate the instructor's movements, most of them awkward and uncertain in their execution. "Tell me about the psychological evaluation process," she said. "How do you identify candidates who have the mental fortitude for this type of work?" Thompson's expression grew thoughtful. "Experience. Intuition. There are certain qualities that can't be taught or faked. We look for individuals who possess an innate understanding of what it means to serve something greater than themselves." They moved to another section of the training ground, where candidates were practicing maritime insertion techniques. The pool area was filled with the sound of splashing water and shouted instructions. Several trainees were struggling with underwater navigation exercises, their faces masks of determination and exhaustion. "The dropout rate is significant," Thompson noted. "Roughly 70% of candidates don't complete the program, but those who do emerge as some of the most capable operators in the world." Sarah observed the training with keen interest, asking detailed questions about methodology and selection criteria. Her inquiries revealed a deep understanding of special operations that impressed even Thompson's experienced eye. As they continued their tour, they encountered various aspects of SEAL training: combat, diving exercises, weapons training, tactical communications, and survival skills. Each phase was designed to test different aspects of a candidate's capabilities while building the foundation for advanced operations. "The bond between team members is sacred," Thompson explained as they watched a squad working through a complex tactical scenario. "These men learn to trust each other with their lives. That level of brotherhood can't be replicated in civilian life." They paused near the obstacle course, where candidates were negotiating a series of challenging barriers. The course was designed to test not just physical ability, but problem-solving skills and teamwork. Some candidates helped their struggling teammates, while others focused solely on their own performance. Leadership emerges naturally in this environment, Thompson observed. We don't have to teach someone to be a leader. We create conditions where true leaders reveal themselves. Sarah watched as one candidate stopped to help a teammate who had fallen behind, despite the obvious cost to his own completion time. The gesture wasn't lost on the instructors, who made notes on their evaluation sheets. What about women in special operations? Sarah asked. The barriers have been falling across different branches. Thompson's jaw tightened slightly. The standards don't change. Man or woman, everyone faces the same requirements. Physical, mental, emotional. There's no accommodation for differences when bullets are flying. Of course, Sarah agreed. Equal standards for equal opportunity. They moved toward the classroom facilities where the academic portion of SEAL training took place. Advanced tactics, intelligence analysis, foreign languages, and cultural awareness were all part of the comprehensive curriculum. The modern battlefield requires more than just physical prowess, Thompson explained. Our operators need to be scholars as well as warriors. They must understand the political, cultural, and strategic implications of their actions. Inside one classroom, an instructor was conducting a session on Middle Eastern cultural dynamics. The candidates were learning how to navigate complex social situations in hostile territories, understanding that their cultural awareness could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Intelligence gathering is often more valuable than direct action, the instructor was explaining. A well-placed conversation can provide information worth more than any weapon system. Sarah listened intently to the lecture, occasionally asking Thompson clarifying questions about specific protocols or procedures. Her knowledge of intelligence operations was evident in her inquiries. They spent the afternoon visiting different training modules. Urban warfare simulations, hostage rescue scenarios, and counterterrorism exercises. Each environment was designed to replicate real-world conditions that SEAL teams might encounter in actual operations. As evening approached, Thompson and Sarah found themselves at the memorial wall, where the names of fallen SEALs were etched in black granite. The wall served as a sobering reminder of the ultimate sacrifice that some operators had made in service to their country. Every name on this wall represents someone who understood the cost of freedom, Thompson said quietly. They knew the risks and accepted them willingly. Sarah stood silently before the memorial, her expression solemn. The weight of those sacrifices was palpable in the gathering twilight. The families carry that burden too, she said finally. The wives, children, parents. They serve in their own way. Thompson nodded. That's something we don't always acknowledge enough. The support system that makes it possible for these men to do what they do. As they walked back toward the main building, Thompson reflected on the day's conversations. Sarah Mitchell had impressed him with her knowledge and professionalism, but something about her remained enigmatic. There was a depth to her understanding that suggested more than academic knowledge of special operations. I appreciate you taking the time for this comprehensive tour, Sarah said as they reached the parking area. It's important for me to understand every aspect of the program. Of course, proper oversight requires proper understanding, Thompson replied, though I suspect your background has already given you considerable insight into our operations. Sarah smiled slightly. Intelligence work provides a certain perspective, but seeing the training firsthand is invaluable. They shook hands formally, and Sarah headed toward her vehicle. Thompson watched her drive away, his mind churning with questions about the true purpose of her visit. Pentagon liaisons typically focused on budgets and resource allocation. Sarah Mitchell's interests seemed far more operational in nature. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Thompson received a classified briefing that a high-value terrorist target had been located in a remote mountain region. The mission would require a small, highly skilled team capable of operating in extreme conditions with minimal support. As he reviewed the mission parameters, Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that recent events were somehow connected. The timing of Sarah Mitchell's visit, her detailed questions about training protocols, and now this urgent operational requirement seemed more than coincidental. The mission briefing revealed the target to be a bomb maker responsible for multiple attacks against American interests. Intelligence indicated he was hiding in a fortified compound accessible only through treacherous mountain terrain. The operation would require insertion via helicopter, followed by a dangerous overland approach to avoid detection. Thompson assembled his most experienced team leaders to discuss mission planning. The complexity of the operation demanded careful consideration of every variable. Weather conditions, enemy strength, extraction protocols, and contingency planning all required detailed analysis. This is exactly the type of mission our training prepares teams for, Master Chief Rodriguez observed. High risk, high value, minimal margin for error. As they worked through the operational details, Thompson found his thoughts returning to Sarah Mitchell. Her questions about team dynamics, leadership identification, and psychological evaluation suddenly seemed more significant. Was she evaluating the program for some specific purpose related to this mission? The briefing concluded with orders to begin immediate preparation for deployment. The selected team would have 48 hours to finalize their planning and equipment before insertion. Thompson knew that success would depend not just on their technical skills, but on the intangible qualities that set SEALs apart from other military units. That evening, as Thompson reviewed personnel files for the mission team, he received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was Sarah Mitchell, but her tone was different from their previous conversations. "General, I need to meet with you tonight. There are aspects of my assignment that we haven't discussed." Her voice carried an urgency that immediately caught his attention. "Where and when?" Thompson asked without hesitation. "The pier at 2,100 hours. Come alone." The line went dead, leaving Thompson with more questions and answers. As he prepared for the mysterious meeting, he couldn't help but wonder if his instincts about Sarah Mitchell were about to be proven correct. The pier was shrouded in fog when Thompson arrived at the designated meeting point. The sound of waves against the wooden pilings created an ominous backdrop for whatever revelation was about to unfold. He had served long enough to recognize when a mission was about to take an unexpected turn. Sarah emerged from the shadows precisely at 2,100 hours, her appearance somehow different in the dim light. There was something in her posture, her movement, that suggested capabilities beyond those of a typical intelligence officer. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice carrying across the water. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels." Thompson waited, his years of experience teaching him patience in moments like these. "The mission you received today, the terrorist target in the mountains, it's not what it appears to be." Sarah's words hung in the salt air between them. "Explain," Thompson said simply. "I'm not just a liaison officer, General. I'm operational, and this mission is going to require capabilities that your standard teams don't possess." Thompson studied her carefully in the dim light, his instincts telling him that everything he thought he knew about Commander Sarah Mitchell was about to change. The fog swirled around them as if nature itself was keeping their secrets hidden from prying eyes. "What exactly are you telling me, Commander?" he asked, his voice steady despite the growing certainty that nothing about this mission would be routine. Sarah's response would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything General Thompson thought he knew about special operations, about trust, and about the hidden capabilities that existed within his own military structure. The gesture that would soon freeze him in recognition was still hours away. But the foundation for that moment of shocking revelation was being laid in the fog-shrouded darkness of the Coronado Pier. Sarah's revelation in the fog changed everything Thompson thought he understood about the mission. As she spoke, her military bearing became more pronounced, her language shifting to the precise terminology of someone with operational experience far beyond what any liaison officer should possess. "The target isn't just a bomb maker," Sarah continued, her voice barely audible above the sound of lapping waves. "He's a former CIA asset who went rogue. The intelligence he possesses could compromise ongoing operations across 3 continents." Thompson processed this information with the practiced calm of a career military officer, but internally his mind was racing. Why wasn't this included in the original briefing? Because there are elements within the intelligence community who want him eliminated rather than captured. My job is to ensure he's brought back alive. Sarah paused, studying Thompson's reaction. The team you're planning to send won't be equipped for what they're walking into. And you are? Thompson asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. I've been preparing for this mission for 6 months. The visit to your facility wasn't just oversight. I was evaluating your people to determine who could be trusted with a real objective. The pieces began falling into place in Thompson's mind. Sarah's detailed questions about team dynamics, her interest in psychological evaluation processes, her deep understanding of tactical procedures. She hadn't been conducting routine oversight. She'd been recruiting. What do you need from me? He asked. Access to your most reliable team, complete operational security, and your trust that there are aspects of this mission you cannot know. Sarah's directness was both refreshing and concerning. Thompson had built his career on knowing every detail of operations under his command. The idea of sending his people into danger with incomplete information violated every principle of responsible leadership. Yet something about Sarah's demeanor convinced him that the stakes were higher than a typical counterterrorism operation. I need guarantees about my team's safety, he said firmly. You have them, but they'll be operating under protocols they've never encountered before. Sarah reached in her jacket and withdrew a sealed envelope. These are your orders, signed by people whose names you'll recognize. Thompson took the envelope, but didn't open it immediately. Years of experience had taught him that some knowledge couldn't be unknown once acquired. How much of what you've told me about your background is true? The Navy career is real. The intelligence posting is real. But I haven't been behind a desk for the past 3 years. Sarah's admission confirmed Thompson's growing suspicions about her true role. Special Activities Division, he asked, referring to the CIA's most secretive operational arm. Sarah neither confirmed nor denied his guess, but her slight nod was answer enough. The Special Activities Division recruited from elite military units, training officers for missions that officially didn't exist. If Sarah was sad, her presence at his facility took on entirely different implications. The timeline is compressed, she continued. We insert tomorrow night. Weather conditions will provide optimal cover, but they're also limiting our window of opportunity. Thompson opened the envelope and scanned the orders by the light of his phone. The signatures were authentic, the authorization levels higher than anything he'd seen in routine operations. Whatever Sarah was involved in had support from the very top of the military and intelligence hierarchy. Team composition, he asked. 4 operators plus myself. Your best climbers proficient in mountain warfare, comfortable with extended, deep cover operations. Sarah had clearly given this considerable thought. And, General, they need to be people who can follow orders without requiring complete explanations. Thompson understood what she wasn't saying. The mission would involve activities that his SEALs couldn't be fully briefed on, situations where they would need to trust their training and leadership without understanding the complete picture. Rodriguez, Martinez, Chun, and Williams, he said after a moment's consideration. They're my most experienced mountain specialists. I've observed their training records. They'll work. Sarah's approval carried the weight of professional assessment. Briefing at 0600 tomorrow. Standard counterterrorism cover story for now. As they prepare to part ways, Thompson felt compelled to ask one more question. Why trust me with this information? You could have operated without my knowledge. Because when this mission goes sideways, and all missions like this eventually go sideways, I need someone in command position who understands what's really at stake. Sarah's honesty was both reassuring and ominous. Thompson watched her disappear into the fog, then stood alone on the pier processing everything he'd learned. In 30 years of military service, he'd encountered classified operations before, but nothing quite like this. The intersection of military special operations and intelligence activities created a gray area where normal rules didn't always apply. The next morning's briefing proceeded according to Sarah's script. The 4 selected SEALs listened intently as she outlined what appeared to be a standard high-value target elimination mission. Their questions were professional, focused on tactical considerations and operational logistics. Master Chief Rodriguez, the team's senior non-commissioned officer, studied the satellite imagery of the target location with practiced eyes. Approach routes are limited, he observed. We're looking at a minimum 12-hour hike through hostile terrain. Weather forecast shows cloud cover moving in tomorrow night, Petty Officer Chen added. Could work in our favor for insertion, but might complicate extraction. Sarah listened to their analysis with approval. These men were exactly what the mission required. Experienced professionals who could adapt to changing circumstances without losing focus on their primary objective. Equipment loadout will be modified for extended mountain operations, she announced. We'll be carrying additional climbing gear and cold weather supplies. Petty Officer Martinez raised his hand. Ma'am, intel reports suggest the target compound has significant defensive positions. Are we looking at a siege situation? Negative. This is a quick in-out operation. We neutralize resistance and complete the objective within a 4-hour window. Sarah's response was technically accurate while concealing the true nature of their objective. Thompson observed the briefing from the back of the room, noting how naturally Sarah had assumed operational command. Her interaction with the SEALs was smooth and professional, demonstrating the kind of tactical knowledge that only came from actual field experience. Following the briefing, the team began their mission preparation. Equipment checks, route planning, communications protocols, and contingency procedures. The familiar rhythm of pre-deployment activities helped mask the unusual nature of their actual assignment. That evening, Sarah approached Thompson privately to discuss final operational details. They met in his office after normal working hours, away from the casual observation of other personnel. Your team is excellent, she began. Their preparation has been thorough and professional. They're the best I have, Thompson replied. I just hope they're prepared for whatever you're really taking them into. General, there's something else you need to understand about tomorrow night. Sarah's tone became more serious. If the mission goes wrong, if we're compromised or captured, there will be no official acknowledgement of our presence in that area. Thompson had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed still carried impact. Plausible deniability. Complete deniability. As far as official records are concerned, this mission never happened. Sarah's words hung heavy in the air between them. And if you don't come back, then you file reports indicating a training accident during mountain warfare exercises. For SEALs, and one liaison officer lost in an avalanche. Sarah had clearly thought through all contingencies. Thompson struggled with the ethical implications of what she was describing. Sending his people into danger was part of his responsibility, but doing so under false pretenses violated his personal code of leadership. I need your word that you'll do everything possible to bring them home, he said finally. You have it. But, General, if circumstances force me to choose between mission success and team safety, you need to understand what my priorities will be. Thompson met her gaze steadily. I understand, but those men trust me with their lives. That trust isn't something I take lightly. Which is exactly why you were chosen for this conversation. Sarah's respect for his position was evident. Your reputation for protecting your people is part of why this can work. They spent another hour reviewing contingency plans and communication protocols. Sarah would maintain contact through encrypted channels during the mission, but Thompson's ability to provide support would be severely limited by the unofficial nature of the operation. As Sarah prepared to leave, Thompson found himself studying her more carefully. There was something about her bearing, her movement, that suggested capabilities beyond what even her CIA background would explain. She moved with the unconscious confidence of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. Commander, before you go, where exactly did your training come from? Your operational knowledge is more extensive than typical intelligence work would provide. Sarah paused at the door, considering her response. Let's just say that the line between intelligence gathering and direct action isn't always as clear as the textbook suggests. Thompson understood that was all the explanation he would receive. As she left his office, he remained behind to contemplate the weight of what he had agreed to. Tomorrow night, He would be sending 4 of his best people into a situation he didn't fully understand, under the command of someone whose true capabilities remained largely unknown. The mission briefing the next morning covered final equipment checks and insertion procedures. The team would be transported by helicopter to a mountain landing zone approximately 15 kilometers from the target. From there, they would proceed on foot through rugged terrain to reach their objective. Radio silence will be maintained except for emergency situations, Sarah emphasized. We go in dark and stay dark until objective completion. The SEALs nodded their understanding. Operating without communication support was challenging, but not unprecedented in their training. They trusted their leadership and their own abilities to handle whatever situation they encountered. As evening approached, the team made final preparations for deployment. Weapons were cleaned and tested, equipment was packed according to strict weight limitations, and each operator reviewed his specific responsibilities one final time. Thompson watched these preparations with mixed feelings. Pride in his team's professionalism was tempered by concern about the unknown elements of their mission. In a few hours, they would disappear into the mountains on an operation that officially didn't exist. Sarah approached him as the team prepared to board their transport helicopter. In her mountain warfare gear, she looked every inch the special operations professional. Her equipment was arranged with the same attention to detail as any SEAL, her weapons maintained to the same exacting standards. "Any final instructions, General?" she asked. "Bring my people home, Commander. Whatever else happens, bring them home." "Understood, sir." Sarah's response carried the weight of personal commitment rather than mere professional acknowledgement. As the helicopter lifted off into the darkness, Thompson watched until its lights disappeared into the mountain terrain. For the next 72 hours, he would have no contact with the team except through Sarah's encrypted communications. The success or failure of their mission would remain unknown until they returned or failed to return. Standing alone on the landing pad, Thompson reflected on the strange series of events that had led to this moment. A routine Pentagon liaison visit had evolved into the most complex and secretive operation of his career. Whatever Sarah Mitchell really was, whatever her true mission involved, his people were now committed to supporting her objectives. The sound of approaching vehicles interrupted his thoughts. A convoy of unmarked SUVs was arriving at the compound, their timing suggesting connection to the departed mission. As the vehicle stopped, several individuals in civilian clothing emerged and began walking toward the main building. Thompson recognized the lead figure despite the civilian attire. General Patricia Hayes, Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, was not someone who made social visits to training facilities. Her presence confirmed that tonight's mission had implications far beyond anything Thompson had been told. "General Thompson," Hayes said as she approached. "We need to talk." General Hayes' arrival transformed the atmosphere at the compound immediately. Her security detail dispersed with practiced efficiency while she and Thompson walked toward his office. The presence of the DIA's deputy director meant that tonight's mission had ramifications extending far beyond special operations. "I assume Commander Mitchell briefed you on the operational requirements," Hayes said as they entered Thompson's office and closed the door. "To a degree," Thompson replied carefully, "though I suspect there are layers to this situation that haven't been shared." Hayes activated a small electronic device that would prevent their conversation from being monitored. "What you're about to learn cannot leave this room. The target your team is pursuing tonight has information that could destabilize 3 allied governments." Thompson absorbed this revelation while maintaining his professional composure. The original briefing indicated a terrorist bombmaker. Cover story. The target is Dr. Ahmad Qasim, former MIT professor who was recruited by CIA 12 years ago. He developed encryption protocols that were used to protect some of our most sensitive communications channels. Hayes paused to gauge Thompson's reaction. 6 months ago, he disappeared with those protocols and everything he learned while working with us. The implications were staggering. If an asset with that level of access had gone rogue, the damage to intelligence operations could be catastrophic. Why send a small team instead of a full extraction force? Because we don't know who else is compromised. The leak that allowed Qasim to escape came from inside our own intelligence community. Hayes' expression was grim. Commander Mitchell is one of the few operators we're certain hasn't been turned. Thompson began understanding why Sarah had been so secretive about mission details. If there were traitors within the intelligence apparatus, operational security required compartmentalizing information to the absolute minimum necessary for success. What about my team? Are they at risk from internal threats? Your SEALs are clean. Their selection was based partly on their isolation from intelligence operations. Hayes appreciated Thompson's concern for his people. But they're walking into a situation where the enemy might have advance warning of their approach. This revelation added another layer of complexity to an already dangerous mission. Thompson's people were skilled and experienced, but they were trained to fight external enemies, not to operate in environments where their own side might be compromised. How much does Mitchell really know about the situation? Thompson asked. Everything. She's been hunting Qasim for 6 months, following leads across 4 countries. This is her operation from beginning to end. Hayes' respect for Sarah was evident. She's also one of our most capable field operatives. The conversation was interrupted by an encrypted communication from the mission team. Sarah's voice crackled through static as she reported their successful insertion and the beginning of their overland movement toward the target. Weather conditions are deteriorating, she reported, but we're maintaining timeline for objective completion. Hayes listened to the brief transmission with evident concern. Mountain weather can change rapidly. If they get caught in a storm, extraction becomes problematic. Thompson understood the implications. His team was now committed to a path that offered limited opportunities for evacuation if circumstances changed. They would need to complete their mission and reach the extraction point regardless of external conditions. Over the next several hours, periodic communications from the team tracked their progress through increasingly difficult terrain. Sarah's reports were brief and professional, but Thompson could detect subtle indications of the challenges they were facing. Approaching objective area came the transmission at 0200 hours, initiating final reconnaissance phase. Hayes had remained at the compound throughout the night, her presence indicating the critical importance of the mission's outcome. Both generals monitored the communications while reviewing contingency plans for various scenarios. If Qasim has been turned by a foreign intelligence service, his capture becomes even more critical, Hayes explained during one quiet period. The information he possesses could be used to compromise ongoing operations worldwide. Thompson found himself thinking about his 4 SEALs, now moving through hostile territory with incomplete knowledge of what they were really facing. Their trust in their leadership was complete, but that trust came with responsibilities that weighed heavily on both him and Hayes. At 0315 hours, Sarah's voice returned with an edge of tension. Eyes on objective. Multiple hostiles present. Numbers exceed intelligence estimates. The compound was more heavily defended than expected, a situation that could indicate either increased security awareness or advance warning of the team's approach. Thompson felt his stomach tighten as he considered the implications for his people's safety. Do they abort? He asked Hayes. Negative. Mitchell has operational command, and she understands the stakes. Hayes' response was professionally correct, but personally difficult. The radio remained silent for nearly an hour while the team presumably conducted detailed reconnaissance of the target area. Thompson found himself staring at the communication equipment, willing it to provide updates on his people's situation. When Sarah's voice finally returned, it carried the controlled urgency of someone in immediate contact with the enemy. Initiating assault phase. Multiple tangos neutralized. Moving to objective. The sound of distant gunfire could be heard in the background of her transmission, indicating that the team had been forced into open combat. Thompson's years of experience told him that once stealth was lost, the mission timeline compressed dramatically. Package secured, came Sarah's next transmission. But we've got complications. Additional hostiles arriving from external locations. This was the scenario every special operations commander dreaded. A successful mission that turned into a fighting withdrawal against overwhelming odds. Thompson's people were skilled, but they were outnumbered in hostile territory with limited ammunition and no immediate support. Extraction point compromised, Sarah reported. Moving to alternate location. Hayes immediately began coordinating alternative extraction options, but their choices were limited by the mountainous terrain and deteriorating weather conditions. The helicopter that had inserted the team was their only realistic option for evacuation, but it couldn't reach them if they couldn't reach the designated pickup point. "General," Hayes said quietly, "there's something else you need to know about Commander Mitchell." Thompson turned his attention from the radio to Hayes, sensing another revelation coming. Her operational background isn't just CIA. She's former SEAL herself. Hayes let this information sink in before continuing. Part of the first generation of women to complete the full training program. Thompson felt a shock of recognition. There had been rumors within the SEAL community about experimental training programs that included female candidates, but official records were classified beyond his access level. If Sarah was actually a qualified SEAL operator, many aspects of her knowledge and capabilities suddenly made sense. "That's impossible," he said reflexively. "Women aren't authorized for SEAL training. Officially, they aren't. Unofficially, there have been programs exploring that possibility for several years." Hayes' confirmation challenged everything Thompson thought he knew about his own service branch. How many others are there? That information is compartmentalized beyond your clearance level. But Commander Mitchell isn't unique. Hayes paused as another transmission came through. "Moving through difficult terrain," Sarah reported. "Pursuit is organized and persistent. They know these mountains better than intelligence indicated." The team was clearly in serious trouble. Their extraction point was compromised. They were being pursued by unknown numbers of hostiles, and weather conditions were making helicopter support increasingly unlikely. "We need to get them support," Thompson said, his concern for his people overriding operational security considerations. "With what assets?" "Officially, they're not there. Unofficially, we have no forces in position to assist." Hayes' frustration was evident despite her professional demeanor. Thompson realized that Sarah and his 4 SEALs were completely on their own in hostile territory. Whatever happened next would depend entirely on their skills, their training, and their ability to work together as a cohesive unit. At 0445 hours, Sarah's voice returned with a different quality, tired but determined. "Reach secondary extraction point. Establishing defensive perimeter. Enemy contact imminent." The team had fought their way through several hours of running combat to reach an alternate pickup location. Thompson could hear the exhaustion in Sarah's voice, but also the professional competence of someone accustomed to operating under extreme pressure. "Extraction helicopter inbound," Hayes announced after coordinating with aviation assets. "ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes could be an eternity in a firefight. Thompson found himself calculating ammunition expenditures, casualty probabilities, and defensive positioning options. His people were trained for exactly this type of situation, but training and reality were different experiences. "Contact." Sarah's transmission was nearly drowned out by the sound of automatic weapons fire. "Multiple directions. We're surrounded." Thompson grabbed the radio microphone without conscious thought. "This is General Thompson. Give me a situation report." "General, good to hear your voice." Rodriguez's familiar voice came through the static. "We've got maybe 30 hostiles in elevated positions. Mitchell's coordinating our defense, but we're taking casualties." The mention of casualties hit Thompson like a physical blow. These weren't statistics in a briefing room. These were his people, men he had trained and led for years. The possibility of losing them to a mission he didn't fully understand was almost unbearable. "Who's hit?" he asked. Chin took shrapnel in the shoulder. "Still operational, but limited." Rodriguez's voice remained steady despite the circumstances. "Williams has some kind of leg wound. Mitchell's moving between positions like she's done this before." If Sarah really was a former SEAL, her combat leadership abilities would be invaluable in their current situation. Thompson found himself hoping that her unconventional background would be enough to bring his people home alive. "Helicopter approaching." Sarah's voice cut through the radio chatter. But the landing zone is hot. Multiple machine gun positions covering the approach. The extraction helicopter was arriving into what amounted to a prepared ambush. Without suppression of the enemy positions, any attempt to land would result in the aircraft being shot down, making the situation catastrophically worse. "We need to clear those positions," Rodriguez reported. "But we don't have the ammunition for a sustained assault." Thompson could hear the tactical problem developing through the radio communications. His team was pinned down by superior numbers in defensive positions while trying to provide security for helicopter extraction. The mathematics of the situation were not favorable. Suddenly, Sarah's voice came through with unexpected authority. "All units, prepare for coordinated assault on my signal. Rodriguez, take Williams and suppress the eastern positions. Martinez, Chun, you're with me on the western guns." Thompson heard the sound of explosions through the radio, followed by intensive small arms fire. Sarah was committing the entire team to a simultaneous assault on multiple enemy positions, a high-risk tactical decision that would either clear the landing zone or result in catastrophic casualties. "LZ secure," came Rodriguez's triumphant shout. "Helicopter inbound." The sound of rotor blades grew louder through the radio as the extraction aircraft approached the hastily cleared landing zone. Thompson could hear his people moving toward evacuation while maintaining suppressive fire against enemy positions. "All aboard," Sarah's voice announced. Lifting off now, the relief Thompson felt was overwhelming. His people were safe, and the mission had apparently succeeded. But as the helicopter carried them away from the mountain battlefield, he realized that his questions about Commander Sarah Mitchell were far from answered. In fact, the night's revelations had created more mysteries than they had solved. If Sarah was really a former SEAL, if women had been secretly participating in special operations training, if there were programs operating beyond his knowledge within his own service branch, then everything he thought he understood about naval special warfare was incomplete. The helicopter would arrive at the compound within the hour. When it did, Thompson intended to get answers to questions that went far beyond tonight's mission. The gesture that would soon freeze him in recognition was approaching rapidly, but he had no way of knowing that everything he had learned so far was merely preparation for a revelation that would challenge his most fundamental assumptions about military service. The helicopter touched down at Coronado just as dawn was breaking over the Pacific. Thompson and Hayes waited on a landing pad as the aircraft powered down, both generals eager to debrief the returning team and assess the mission's success. Sarah was the first to emerge from the helicopter, moving with the careful precision of someone managing minor injuries. Behind her came Thompson's 4 SEALs, all walking but showing signs of their difficult night in the mountains. "Medical team is standing by," Thompson called out as the team approached. "She needs attention for shrapnel wounds," Sarah replied. "Williams has a leg injury that should be examined. The rest of us are operational." Thompson watched as his people were escorted toward the medical facility, noting their professional demeanor despite obvious fatigue. They had performed exactly as he expected under extreme conditions, but something about Sarah's interaction with them seemed different now that he knew her true background. "General Hayes wants to debrief you immediately," Thompson told Sarah as the wounded SEALs were taken for treatment. "Of course, but first, I need to secure the package we recovered." Sarah gestured toward a sealed case that Rodriguez was carrying with obvious care. The case presumably contained Dr. Kassem or intelligence materials related to the mission objective. Thompson realized that despite commanding the forces that had executed the operation, he still didn't know exactly what they had accomplished in the mountains. Hayes approached as they walked toward the debriefing facility. "Commander, preliminary reports suggest the mission was successful despite complications. Targets secured along with significant intelligence materials," Sarah confirmed. But General Thompson's people performed far beyond expectations. They saved the mission when tactical situation deteriorated. Thompson felt pride in his team's performance, but also growing curiosity about how Sarah had coordinated their activities. Her leadership during the firefight had been decisive and effective, suggesting combat experience that went beyond intelligence operations. The debriefing session took place in a secure conference room with Hayes, Thompson, and several intelligence analysts present. Sarah provided a detailed account of the mission from insertion through extraction, her report revealing the complexity of what his people had actually accomplished. Target compound was more heavily fortified than intelligence indicated. She began. Dr. Kassem was being held by a foreign intelligence service rather than operating independently. This revelation explained the increased security and organized pursuit the team had encountered. If Kassem had been captured rather than defecting willingly, the entire situation was more complex than originally briefed. Which foreign service? Hayes asked. Russian SVR, based on equipment and tactics observed. They were preparing to move Kassem to another location when we arrived. Sarah's assessment had significant implications for ongoing intelligence operations. Thompson listened to these revelations with growing understanding of why the mission had required such extreme secrecy. If the Russians had captured a former CIA asset with access to critical encryption protocols, the damage to American intelligence capabilities could be enormous. Kassem's current status? Hayes inquired. Secured and available for debriefing. He claims he was taken against his will 3 months ago. Sarah's report suggested that the professor might be a victim rather than a traitor. The debriefing continued for another hour, covering tactical details, enemy capabilities, and intelligence gathered during the operation. Thompson was impressed by Sarah's thorough analysis and professional presentation, but he remained focused on questions about her background and training. When the formal debriefing concluded, Hayes departed with her security detail and the recovered intelligence materials. Thompson found himself alone with Sarah for the first time since her return from the mountains. "Commander, we need to discuss what happened tonight," he said directly. "Of course, General. Your people performed exceptionally under difficult circumstances." Sarah's response was professionally appropriate, but avoided the personal questions Thompson wanted to address. "I'm not talking about the mission details. I'm talking about what General Hayes told me about your background." Thompson decided that direct confrontation was the only way to get honest answers. Sarah studied him for a moment before responding. "What specifically did she tell you?" "That you're former SEAL. That there have been secret training programs for women." Thompson watched her reaction carefully. "That everything I thought I knew about naval special warfare is incomplete. General Hayes shared classified information with you because the mission required it. That doesn't mean we should discuss it further." Sarah's deflection confirmed that there were indeed secrets being kept from him. "As the commanding officer of this facility, I think I have a right to know if there are programs operating within my area of responsibility that I'm not aware of." Thompson's frustration was beginning to show. Sarah was quiet for several minutes, apparently considering how much she could or should reveal. Finally, she spoke with the careful precision of someone navigating classified boundaries. "There are experimental programs exploring capabilities and opportunities across all military specialties. Some of those programs require operational security that extends even to senior commanders." Her explanation was technically accurate while revealing nothing specific. "Show me," Thompson said suddenly. "Sir, if you're really a qualified SEAL operator, prove it. Show me something that only someone with that training would know." Thompson's challenge was both professional and personal. Sarah hesitated, clearly weighing the implications of what he was asking. Then, without warning, she moved into a combat stance and executed a precise series of hand-to-hand combat techniques that Thompson recognized immediately. The movements were fluid, economical, and devastatingly effective. But more than that, they incorporated specific modifications and improvements that were unique to SEAL training protocols. No amount of general military training or intelligence work could have provided that level of specialized knowledge. Thompson watched in fascination as Sarah demonstrated advanced close-quarters combat techniques, weapon retention procedures, and tactical positioning methods that were closely guarded secrets within the SEAL community. Her execution was flawless, suggesting not just training, but extensive practical application. "Anyone can learn martial arts, Commander," he said, though he was already convinced of her authenticity. Sarah smiled slightly and reached into her pocket. What she withdrew made Thompson's blood freeze in recognition. It was a small metal object that most people would dismiss as insignificant jewelry or ornamentation. But Thompson knew exactly what it was and what it represented. The trident pin she held was not standard military issue. It was a specially modified version given only to members of a program, so classified that Thompson had only heard rumors of its existence. The subtle alterations to the traditional seal insignia were visible only to someone who knew what to look for. But Sarah didn't simply show him the pin. She held it in a specific manner, her fingers positioned in a precise configuration that constituted a recognition signal used only among members of the most elite special operations units. The gesture was complex, meaningful, and absolutely unmistakable to anyone who had been taught its significance. Thompson's trained, I caught every detail of the gesture. The angle of her wrist, the positioning of her fingers, the subtle rotation of the pin itself. It was a signal he had seen only twice before in his career, both times from operators whose existence was officially denied and whose missions remained classified decades later. The gesture was SEAL exclusive, known only to a select few within the special operations community. It was used to identify operatives working under deep cover, participants in programs that operated beyond normal military command structures, individuals whose training and capabilities exceeded even the demanding standards of conventional SEAL teams. Thompson stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The implications were staggering. If Sarah was using that particular recognition signal, it meant she was not just a former SEAL or participant in an experimental program. She was something far more significant and far more dangerous than he had imagined. The gesture indicated membership in a unit that Thompson had heard referred to only in whispered conversations among the highest levels of special operations leadership. A unit that recruited from existing SEAL teams and subjected its members to training that pushed far beyond the limits of conventional military preparation. A unit whose members were prepared for missions that required capabilities no ordinary military force could provide. That gesture is SEAL exclusive, Thompson said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah maintained the precise hand position for another moment before smoothly transitioning back to a relaxed stance. Her expression was serious, professional, but tinged with something that might have been relief at finally revealing her true identity. "Yes, sir, it is," she replied simply. Thompson found himself staring at her with new understanding. Everything about the past few days suddenly made sense. Her comprehensive knowledge of special operations, her tactical leadership during the mountain firefight, her authority to command his most experienced SEALs in combat situations. "Unit?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "DevGru Gold Squadron," Sarah replied, using the official designation for the most classified element within Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Thompson's knees felt weak. DevGru Gold Squadron was legendary within special operations circles, but its existence was officially denied. The unit reportedly handled missions that were too sensitive or too dangerous for conventional special forces. Its members were selected from the very best SEAL operators and subjected to training that broke down and rebuilt them according to standards that push human capabilities to their absolute limits. "How many others?" Thompson asked, his voice still shaky from the revelation. "That's not information I can share, General. But you're not the only senior commander who's been kept in the dark about certain developments." Sarah's response suggested that the scope of these secret programs was larger than he had imagined. Thompson sank into a nearby chair, his mind reeling from the implications of what he had learned. The woman he had known as Commander Sarah Mitchell, Pentagon liaison officer, was actually one of the most elite special operations soldiers in American military history. Her presence at his facility, the mission in the mountains, his own involvement, all of it was part of something much larger and more complex than routine special operations. "The gesture," he said finally. "How long have you been authorized to use it?" 3 years, since completing the Gold Squadron selection program. Sarah's answer confirmed that she had been operating at this level throughout her supposed intelligence posting. Thompson understood now why General Hayes had been so confident in Sarah's abilities, why the mission had required such extreme secrecy, why his own involvement had been compartmentalized to the absolute minimum necessary. He was dealing with capabilities and authorities that existed at the very apex of American military power. What happens now, he asked. Now you understand why certain information is compartmentalized even from senior commanders, and why the people under your command occasionally participate in operations that they can never discuss. Sarah's explanation helped clarify some of the strange incidents and unexplained absences that Thompson had noticed over the years. The revelation that DevGru Gold Squadron existed, that it recruited and operated within his own service branch, that at least one of its members was a woman who had completed training programs he didn't know existed. All of this fundamentally changed Thompson's understanding of naval special warfare. As he sat in the conference room processing these revelations, Thompson realized that his career in special operations had been based on incomplete knowledge of his own military structure. There were capabilities, authorities, and programs operating at levels beyond his clearance that influenced everything he thought he controlled. The gesture that had frozen him in recognition was more than just a signal between elite operators. It was proof that the American military possessed capabilities that exceeded even his experienced imagination. And Commander Sarah Mitchell, or whatever her real name might be, was living proof that the future of special operations included possibilities he had never considered. The morning sun streamed through the conference room windows as Thompson contemplated the weight of what he had learned. His 4 SEALs would recover from their injuries and return to their normal duties, probably never fully understanding the true nature of the mission they had supported. But Thompson would carry the knowledge of Sarah's real identity for the rest of his career, a reminder that even at his level of command, there were always more secrets hidden within the shadows of national security. The gesture was SEAL exclusive, but it represented something far more significant than military tradition. It was a symbol of capabilities that pushed beyond the boundaries of conventional warfare, operated by individuals whose training and dedication exceeded the limits of normal human endurance. And Thompson had just witnessed proof that those capabilities were real, operational, and far more advanced than anything he had previously imagined possible.